Hi folks, 2 on Bo McGrath here with my son Daniel. Wanted to give you an introduction to how we do basic punching in Pekiti-Tirsia, and it's different than standard boxing because we have to line up to make it an easy transition between our empty hand work and our knife work. So the first step is the guard. So if we both guard up, if one stands in a basic boxing guard where he has his hands low by his cheeks, what we want to do with Pekiti-Tirsia is raise that higher, at least the height of your eyebrows, because we're protecting our eyes. You want the arms more forward, so you have extension on your movements when you go to blade. And actually when you go to blade, pull a couple out, rest even higher than that, especially on hammer grip, where you might be slashing and you don't want to, wind up cutting yourself for the slash. So the stance is going to be one leg forward, the leg turned out slightly. So I'll face the camera, Dan will be to the side. You want your feet parallel to one another, but 45 degrees to the target. If they're parallel to one another, that helps you close your groin if the guy decides to throw a kick. You want them turned slightly. Generally, I go by 45 degrees. If your knees are straight on, obviously you can get a kick in the knee and break the kneecap. If they're completely to the side, you'll collapse if you get a kick on the leg, but you also expose your kidneys to attack. Not something that's a legal target in boxing, but obviously in the street you don't get stabbed in the kidney. So that 45-degree position kind of gives you a good balance between protecting the back and the front of the body. Now, when it comes to the punches, we are doing something that both my Indonesian and Philippine instructor would recommend, was that the natural bend in your arm as you're hanging relaxed, you don't want to have your punches go farther than that. So, unless you're standing at attention, your arm's not straight, right? There's a slight bend. So your punches only go that far. You never go beyond that natural bend, so you don't hyperextend or damage the tendons or the bones in your elbow. So the first punch is going to be a jab. He extends the hand out, what I have people do, so their elbow is bent, he's in that stance, and then I simply press on this, and you resist the pressure, and I want a slight forward lean in the lead leg. So let's say 60-40 weight distribution, 60 in the front, 40 in the back, and he's pressing on that, and he's resisting my pressure. Now, I'll have him go and I'll push back, say about 4 to 6 inches, and he pushes forward on that. And what I'm doing is trying to get him to understand the chain of muscles from the wrist all the way down to the rear leg of what's being engaged by that punch. So we're just extending that last 6 inches, so kind of using me almost as a heavy bag, just to feel isometrically the muscle engagement down to the leg. Then what I'll do is I'll have my fist connecting with Dan, and I have him go and throw the punch to my hand, and he has to go over my arm. So if, like for instance, Muhammad Ali would throw his jab, resting it between shots down here, so his deltoid gets a chance to rest, right? You wouldn't want to do that with a knife. Not only you're open, but you're traversing such a long distance, and you're coming, if Dan holds the knives, you're coming kind of up into the point of his blade if you punch like that, right? So we'll a lot of times use the jab to get him to close his guard. So I might jab and move, and then from that side come up with a hit on this side, right? So you want to tie that into your empty hand work. So the jab is going to come straight out, and you want it to come up and over my hand, and then back. See, so I line up here, here's my jaw, he punches and comes back. So the hand comes up and over and does not get tangled in. Say for instance, if he did a shell type of stance, he's not coming up and running the risk of coming to my arm by raising up on his jab. It's just coming out and back, right? When we do the cross, he turns his hand, there's a cross and a fist. And you have that same idea of I'm pushing on it, he's using the push. The weight is 60-40 weight distribution with the front leg and back leg. And he feels that chain from the rear heel all the way up to the knuckles of the hand. And you can feel that pressure. And then we'll go 6 inches back and forth with resistance. So he feels that. Well, all right, so one principle that we try to use in Pekiti-Tirsia is keep our empty hand work so it can be applied with very little modification to weapon work. So you notice in our boxing guards, or empty hand guards, our hands were fairly high up, you know, above the eyes at least, and fairly far forward compared to a regular boxing guard. And the reason for that is when you transfer over to weapons, in this case we use knives, one, you're not going to cut yourself. You know, if you have a low guard, you know, guarding your cheeks, you know, the blades are too close to your face. Also, you might get stabbed in the eye, so you want to really protect that at all costs and have a very high guard. Your guard is farther forward because you want to cut your opponent and guard that zone in front of you, because even if you engage, let's say he comes out and I block the arm, the hand does not hit me, but that blade can still get me. So I need a little more distance, a little more standoff compared to an empty hand guard, right? So in this case, we have Dan in ice pick grip, I'm in hammer grip, and you know, theoretically I could stab into his heart here, right? But look at that long minefield of his blade to the heart. There's probably like a foot of danger zone there that I have to worry about, right? So what I'm more likely to do, and you notice in hammer grip I have a higher guard than his ice pick because the blades are pointed towards me and they're a little farther apart. You know, I don't want to, Dan can afford to be a little tighter in. I need to be a little farther apart so I don't cut my own wrist as the blades move, right? So what I might do here is fake a snipe at his inside arm to get him to close his guard and hammer over the top, and then get an attack and go. We tend to go to the inside angle of the inside of the arms with small blades like these, and these are blades that are considered small compared to, let's say, a sword, which would take an arm off, right? So I might fake his center side and hammer his arm out of the way. I'm not trying to cut through his forearm on the back. This side is a little more resistant to cutting and doing damage. The major arteries and nerves are on this side. And so I'm hammering it out of the way with the pommel, and I might snipe at his eye as I escape, right?